Hello. Today, I want to talk to you about shame. I want to talk to you about its place in many lives, mine, maybe yours. How shame often serves to stifle one's ability to see opportunity in life, and how this can become a real neurological barrier, hiding from us what might be and impeding our growth. I say neurological rather than psychological, and we will get into why I say that shortly. But first, I wanted to talk to you about how shame is quite often a waste of your time. In my work, when I see people who value humanity and care about others, but still find themselves stuck and feeling beyond going further in pursuit of their goals, when I start to dig deeper, what I ultimately find got many of these people stuck was shame. And I will tell you that shame rarely motivates. I know in today's news there is so much discussion that some who should have shame do not have it, while those that have done relatively little are completely immobilized by it. This is our world, and shame itself will not motivate a change or a turnaround in it. But I believe releasing some from the grip of shame just might. Hello there. My name is Zon, and this is the Neuroknotty Practicum Podcast, where I leverage my love of cognitive ecology, along with my 20 plus years of process improvement experience, to help you build practical, sustainable systems that untangle those brain barriers in ways that fit your unique mind. So, today I want you to know that shame is not a necessary element in you acting with humanity and in alignment with your values, and there is neuroscience to prove this. I will say it again. I want you to know that shame is not a necessary element in you acting with humanity and in alignment with your values, and there is neuroscience to prove this. I also want to authorize you to put shame aside for a moment, to say just facts, not judgment, when it comes to how your brain operates and what it needs to operate at its optimum level. But before you turn away and think you are unworthy of losing that shard of shame within your heart, that you're some sort of rare exception, I am fairly certain, because you think that way, you're exactly who needs to lose it. Now, I said earlier that shame creates a neurological barrier, and I said that because when you repeat a thought, your brain wires to look for confirmation of that thought over time, or look for opportunities to meet that expectation. Given that, repeated focus on thoughts of shame only serve inaction in most cases, not growth. So if our goal is in fact to move forward and to grow as human beings, we are best served by leaving shame behind us, or rather transforming it. Transforming that amygdala-based and often immobilizing reaction into something we can use in our prefrontal cortex and conscious thought to make a real difference in our lives that we can feel. So today I want to talk to you about some exercises you can do to further the goal of transforming that shame while you grow, change, and evolve closer to your full aligned humanity, whatever that looks like. But first, I do want to show you the receipts or the backup for what I'm saying. I do want to go over the research that reinforces it, because you need to know where this is coming from. And I think it will help many of you better utilize the exercises we go over later, because you will know why I'm saying this. I am neurodivergent myself. I love to know the depth of background behind anything I learn. And point of fact, I won't learn it unless I do know that background. So I want to give you that gift today. So here's the research that backs up the claims I made earlier in this podcast. Okay, so let's start with claim one, where I said repeating a thought wires the brain to look for confirmation of that thought. Now, where did I get that? Well, the source for this statement is sort of a combining of a few things. Part of this is coming from Donald Hebb's 1949 theory regarding the formation of neural networks, where he theorized that neurons are activated and connected with other neurons to form networks, neural networks. I heard about this most recently when I read the book Rewire Your Anxious Brain by Dr. Catherine Pittman and Elizabeth Carl. To expand on this further, and they also mention this in their book, there is a neuroscientist named Dr. Carla Schatz who gave a really memorable explanation in 1992 of what I'm talking about, and that is that neurons that fire together wire together. Now that I said that, I do want to backtrack just a little bit because humans are at all different levels of their learning, and I want to talk just briefly what a neuron is, at least on a very high level or basic level. A neuron is basically a cell that acts like a messenger. It takes in multiple inputs or signals, processes them, and then sends signals out to other cells in your body and your brain to communicate and make things happen. This is important in the claims I'm making in this podcast because you need to understand the impact of creating these associations within the body and within these neurons and the networks they create with other neurons. That process of creating these associations between circumstances and emotions, and creating emotional memories, eventually generates a significant scaffolding over time or a structure within the brain that can be hard to fight against, especially if it is standing between you and the goals that you are trying to accomplish. Now, sort of another angle to this claim is something I'm fairly certain you have heard of, and that is confirmation bias. And in fact, a few years ago, there was a pretty popular article in Nature Neuroscience. I believe it was published in December of 2019 that discussed this phenomenon of how people, even faced with factual evidence, but what they believed was not true or wasn't accurate, they still favored that information over anything that contradicted those beliefs. So that's claim one. Repeating a thought wires the brain to look for confirmation of that thought. So let's move to claim two I made, which was repeated focus on shame leads to inaction, not growth in most cases. And I said in most cases because there are some brilliant arguments for shame having a place as an indicator that something is worth exploring further. But first of all, I do want to draw your attention to a study by June Price Tangney, Jeff Struig, and Deborah J. Mashek called Moral Emotions and Moral Behavior. This was published in 2006 in the Annual Review of Psychology Online. In this paper, they propose that shame actually reduces one's ability to behave in socially constructive ways. They discuss how feelings of shame can result in you feeling smaller, that you're shrinking, a sense of being worthless or powerless. These types of feelings tend to promote inaction by turning your focus in on you and making it difficult, in some cases impossible, for you to focus on others. They even go on to discuss how an individual's ability to make empathetic connections is disrupted by shame. So calling yourself a bad person actually may derail your ability to properly empathize with others. In addition, there was a University of Milan study and a literature review published in 2014 in Procedia Social and Behavioral Sciences, which discussed how shame and guilt were actually related to lower cognitive performance than the neutral conditions they studied. They go over the distinction between guilt and shame, indicating that guilt is a motivator for action because it centers the circumstance and its consequences over the person who did it and their value as a human being. So that's claim two. Repeated focus on shame leads to inaction, not growth in most cases. So move on to claim three that I had at the beginning of the podcast, which is to grow, we are best served by leaving shame behind us, or rather transforming it. Now, this claim really comes from my own experience in a lot of ways. It comes from personal life experience because when I am overcome with shame, I find I am least productive and least likely to do what I need to do that would create repair. But this also comes from professional experience and work I've done as a mentor, and while helping individuals toward their own solutions when they feel stuck or overwhelmed, and how often shame is behind that. I also draw from those differences between guilt and shame that I just brought up with the last claim. That guilt is more of the motivator than is shame because it offers a pathway for repair, whereas shame just points at the person's value as if unchangeable. I'm also drawing from the idea of growth versus fixed mindsets. And I read about this in a book called Say the Right Thing by Yoshino and Glasgow some years ago. The idea that if you are fixed as good or as a bad person, you will struggle with seeing a way forward to change. What's to change if you're fixed as good or bad already? The growth mindset is that you are always choosing through action to be good or bad, and you can always grow and change and improve. This is well aligned with Buddhist ideology. You are not in a fixed state. What does the Buddhist says? To paraphrase the Buddha, my actions are the ground on which I stand. So now, additionally, in my search for other folks who may have thought that shame was not helpful in the pursuit of this goal, I did locate a very interesting paper. It was in behavior sciences, and it was by Rania W. Saman from the School of Business Administration, American University, Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates. Now, she looked at consumer behavior, which is a bit different, but still interesting in light of this claim. She studied how the feelings someone experiences after failing at a goal affect whether they stick with or complete their next goal. Her study compared two emotions, shame and guilt, specifically, when they arise after failure to complete a goal. What she found in her study was that people were more likely to give up on a new goal when their last goal had associated feelings of shame versus those who felt guilt and kept trying. She gives us great examples to show the difference between guilt and shame, but I want to utilize it here because it sort of crystallizes for me how shame can really not leave a path forward, how it can sort of freeze things in place because it doesn't as readily offer an action or a next step. So this is her example. Consider a person who has vowed to purchase sustainable products, but in one instance she failed to do so. If she blames her failure on her irresponsibility and inability to make ethical choices, then she's attributing her failure to self. She is irresponsible, or she just says irresponsible, and therefore she feels ashamed. Whereas if she blames her failure on the fact that she was in a hurry and did not take the time to check the product's sustainability credentials, then she is placing the blame on an action taken by herself, not researching it, and therefore feels guilty. And I really like this example because it so clearly to me says the solvable. You cannot be in a hurry if you intend to meet the goal of sustainability. You have to take your time to do your research or you can't meet that goal. There is an action. There is a problem that can be solved. But if you're innately lazy or irresponsible at the core of your being, how easy is it to solve that problem? I mean, just thinking of it, I can feel the cognitive drag. It can't be solved. So that's claim three. To grow, we are best served by leaving shame behind us, or rather, transforming it. So, how do we do this? Where do we go from here? Well, let's get into our exercises. And I want to start with this one because for me, this is where everything starts or doesn't. There is something I have said numerous times to mentees, clients, family, and friends because it is one of the most valuable lessons I have personally learned, and it is part of my own practice. And that is this: how you talk to yourself matters. You are not going any further if you are not even offering yourself the courtesy you would offer a stranger. So I often tell people who don't know where to start there. Start offering yourself that courtesy every day. And I know that this is not easy in a world that encourages the opposite. Self-kindness is a practice. You have to try every single day, no exceptions. But fortunately, it is something that can be done in small ways and in small moments and is valuable even in very small incremental steps. And even if you don't always get it right, the practice is what makes the changes. Often for me, these days it shows up as a quick reframing I have to do when I notice my first reaction is to self-shame. For example, I miss a turn and I find myself lost. My initial instinct is to call myself an idiot, maybe, so I do. But then I recognize I should have said differently, and I offer myself another story, another narrative, and I internally turn it around and say, that isn't fair. I have a lot on my mind. I am doing the best I can. calming down has often helped me to get out of these situations before. So I'm sure if I calm down, I can get out of this one. But that is hard. And I can't emphasize enough just how hard self-kindness often is for many of us. Self-kindness can feel impossible or even wrong for so many people. So sometimes when we have to start with something as small as like incremental self-sitting, little moments of learning to just be with ourselves, to come into kindness with our bodies. So here is a daily self-sitting moment for you that you could practice. We're going to begin by finding a reflection. Typically, this would be finding a mirror. I have a hand mirror here. Maybe it's a small pocket one, maybe just your bathroom mirror. And maybe you don't have a mirror at all, and it's your phone's camera and you're filming yourself, even if you aren't recording. If none of those seem accessible to you or comfortable for you, you can just picture your face in your mind, your reflection, or a representation of your reflection. Now, I'm going to encourage you to pause this recording so you can get in front of your reflection, as well as get into a comfortable space where you won't be interrupted for up to the next 15 minutes. I'm probably not going to go that long, but it'll be very close to that. So I think if you give yourself 15 minutes, it should allow you a space there. And I'll be here waiting for you when you get back. So go ahead and press pause. And okay. So now that you're back with your reflection ready and in a comfortable, uninterrupted space, we're going to begin the guided meditation portion of this exercise. Now, if you aren't using this recording for guidance and are doing this practice on your own in the future, I want to encourage you to set a timer so that you don't have to focus on how long this is taking you. Particularly if you struggle with time blindness like I do and have a lot of feelings around possibly missing that time frame. But for really anyone, actually, because keeping track of time does use cognitive load. And you need your working memory for this exercise. So I also find having the time in a container, which is kind of what I consider the timer, sort of like a container, because it creates barriers that really help me to let go a little more. I know there will be an ending. There's a defining point there. So I can let go more. I can enjoy it more. And I can get into my brief meditation a little bit better, and it is more effective for me. All right, so let's return to that image, your face and its reflection. And I want to invite you to focus on your image for a brief moment. I want you to receive it. Now, what I mean by that is I want you to start kind of at the top of your head here and slowly scan down and take in the image before you. For some people, it works to think of a horizontal laser beam that is slowly moving down the face, stopping periodically to allow you to observe and collect information as it slowly scans. Sometimes I even use my hand held horizontally and slowly move it down my face and observe what is directly above it as it moves down. So that may work better for you. And I want to have you gaze at this reflection, just running your eyes over each aspect of your image as if you were looking at a map or a painting. Just taking it in, just noticing details. Just terrain, just a landscape. And as you scan, I want you to stay neutral in how you are taking in these details. For example, rather than I see crow's feet, you might reframe, I see subtle indentation, likely from smiling. a statement of fact rather than a critique. So we'll start with your forehead. So moving down slowly as you do, I want you to observe subtle changes in light, shadow, color, if you can see color changes. Continue to look at this act as just collecting facts, neutral exercise. You may do this by saying in your mind or listening to me say, these are just details. These are just facts. I release the desire to judge what I am seeing. I am whole. I am here. I am everything I need to be in this moment to go where I need to go. So now we move down to the eyebrows. Again, observing subtle changes in light, shadow, color, texture, pattern, but remembering these are just details. These are just facts. I release the desire to judge what I am seeing. I am whole. I am here. I am everything I need to be in this moment to go where I need to go. Now we move to the eyes. Try not to linger too long on the eyes. Noticing light, color, shadow, texture, pattern. If you're uncomfortable with the eyes, that is okay. You can close them and observe light through the eyelids briefly, or skip them entirely and move on while I say, these are just details. These are just facts. I release the desire to judge what I am seeing. I am whole. I am here. I am everything I need to be in this moment to go where I need to go. Go ahead and move to the cheekbones. Again, observing subtle changes in light, shadow, color, pattern, texture. But again, remembering these are just details. These are just facts. I release the desire to judge what I am seeing. I am whole. I am here. I am everything I need to be in this moment to go where I need to go. Moving to the chin, observing light, shadow, color, pattern, texture. And again, these are just details. These are just facts. I release the desire to judge what I am seeing. I am whole. I am here. I am everything I need to be in this moment to go where I need to go. Now I want you to zoom out for a bit to your whole image, your whole face, and say with me one more time in your head or loud. These are just details. These are just facts. I release the desire to judge what I am seeing. I am whole. I am here. I am everything I need to be in this moment to go where I need to go. I want you to stay with yourself for a few minutes. I'm going to be quiet for 2 minutes, and then I will come back. Okay, slowly bringing your attention back to my voice. If you have an affirmation that you've been working on, you may consider closing with that affirmation now. But I encourage you to also adapt whatever affirmation you're using to add your name. There are some studies that indicate that hearing your own name can often be a great way to get your attention and to engage the conscious mind. So if you have an affirmation like I do, and my favorite one right now is one I got from Insight Timer, actually, but I've been using this one quite a bit, is I will reinforce thoughts that strengthen my vision. So if I were adapting this affirmation, as I've said with my name, it would be Zon will reinforce thoughts that strengthen her vision. Or maybe if we were to use the I am whole, I am here, I am everything I need to be in this moment to go where I need to go. If we were to use that, it would be Zon is whole, Zon is here, Zon is everything she needs to be in this moment to go where she needs to go. And I want you to say your affirmation 3 times while truly looking at you without judgment. And as I have said, it is often very hard to do this kind of exercise without judgment, to sit with yourself in the moment and to not be harsh and critical. So if you are not there yet, I'm going to ask you to consider the ancient Buddhist practice of sitting with yourself as a young child. Thich Nhat Hanh talks about this as sitting with yourself as a 5-year-old child. This is a practice that can often help you arrive at self-kindness and self-compassion much faster. Because as humans, we often have more compassion for an innocent child who hasn't been through what we've been through than we have for ourselves right now. Okay, so now that we've completed our exercises, I do want to restate our claims one more time, just to kind of bring everything back together. So, claim number 1, repeating a thought wires the brain to look for confirmation of that thought. Claim number 2, repeated focus on shame leads to inaction, not growth in most cases. Claim number 3, to grow, we are best served by leaving shame behind us, or rather transforming it. So given those 3 claims, those 3 sort of points of focus and the exercises we completed so far, what are we going to focus on moving forward? What should we focus on until we meet again? Well, I say we focus on learning a more neutral relationship with our sense of self. Because having that more neutral relationship through self-sitting practices, for example, we can start to collect better and more useful information about other aspects of ourselves and our lives that can actually get us closer to our goals. Because we'll start to see things more clearly and as they truly are versus as a perception of it. And going forward, I think we should also focus on putting the repetition on practices that help us grow and help us see ourselves in a clearer and, more importantly, compassionate light. Because we need to practice this. We know that the brain will more readily bring forth this compassionate outlook in the future if we practice it readily with ourselves every day. And we need to remember that we're looking for a path forward, a next step, an action. And shame does not offer us that. But self-compassion certainly does. My name is Zon, and thank you so much for joining the Neuroknotty Practicum Podcast, where we discuss practical, shame-free solutions for the system of you. Good luck out there, and we'll talk soon.